Welcome back, closers and leaders, to the Grosso University YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly how I built a high-performance sales team that generated consistent revenue year after year. So make sure you like and subscribe and share this with your friends. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. When I'm thinking about building a high-performance sales team, the thing I think about is foundationally, how strong are we? When I'm working with my clients all over the country, that's the first thing I look at is how strong is your sales foundation? So let me ask you a question. How strong is any structure if the foundation itself is on the verge of collapse? So what we must do if we plan on building a high-performance sales team or a top-notch performing team that generates consistent revenue year after year, if I want to generate 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 million, 200 million, it doesn't really matter, that foundation needs to be strong. And one analogy I like referring to, if anyone's ever been to Chicago, I always love the Chicago skyline, especially over Lake Michigan. As a matter of fact, in 2011, I actually proposed to my wife in Chicago, overlooking the Chicago skyline. And one of the tallest buildings there is the Sears Tower, also known as the Willis Tower. This building is 1,450 feet tall. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, if you look at the Sears Tower or the Willis Tower, the foundation of that skyscraper is 200 concrete cylinders that go 100 feet underground. So it's 200 concrete cylinders that go 100 feet deep. But if you think about it, a 100-foot foundation allows me to build a 1,400-foot skyscraper. So what's my point is, this is where a lot of companies miss the mark, is they start building the skyscraper before they establish the solid foundation for growth and sustainability long term. And then inevitably they get to 5, 10, 15, 20 million, and it's just like a house of cards. This thing can collapse in on itself and implode on itself. So what are those elements that I basically encourage my clients to put forth and actually to create for their team so foundationally they can grow and scale a sales powerhouse? That's what we're going to unpack on this video. So make sure you get your notepad out, get your popcorn ready. There's going to be a lot of useful information. Now, when we talk about foundations, I like referring to a fun story with my son Elijah. Of course, asking questions is one of the most powerful ways to earn someone's business. It's one of the most powerful weapons of influence we have. And my son actually closed me on building him a treehouse with 3 simple questions. Now, those of you that don't know me, I'm actually a fairly handy guy. I'm not like a finished carpenter. I can't do like beautiful masterpieces, but I'm an amazing rough carpenter. I can build damn near anything you want. He's like, Daddy, let me ask you, can you build me a treehouse? I think I can, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Do you think you could build me a treehouse before my birthday? It's kind of tight. I mean, if I really, really tried, I probably could. Well, do you promise? I'm like, oh boy, I gotta be really careful on how I answer this question. I'm like, yes? I'm like, oh, darn it.
It's time to listen up, closers. Before you go any further, you need to hear this. The Grosso University Sales Academy Masterclass is not just another training opportunity. This is the most in-demand, highest-rating sales training program in the history of the home improvement industry. Thousands of sales warriors just like you have gone through this life-changing program taught by our world-class head sales trainer, Daniel Coombsbury, and they are winning more and bigger because of it. If you're serious about dominating in sales, this is where you go to sharpen your edge. The best part is, it's 100% virtual and happens on the second Monday of every month, so there are absolutely 0 excuses not to invest in your growth and development. Why don't you go ahead and hit the link in the description to learn more and lock in your spot and get ready to ignite the greatness within. On behalf of Grosso University, yes, you are a closer, and back to the video.
So anyway, I promised my son I'd build him this tree house, and I knew as good as anybody that if I'm going to build a tree house, which again, if I'm being totally honest here, I'm living my childhood dreams vicariously through my son here, but I knew I had to start off with a solid foundation. So here I got this beautiful tree in the middle of my property. First, I get all the anchoring and supports in. So I found the strongest anchoring system to actually bolt this thing to the tree that I could find. So you can see these big support brackets and braces. And then, of course, I started putting down the rough framework and support braces, making sure this thing is super stable. So this, in a nutshell, is the strong foundation, and I made sure it was over-engineered to be able to handle a treehouse that was twice as big as what I was planning to build. So long story short, with a solid foundation, voila, an incredible treehouse. Now, this is an analogy for you building your powerhouse organization with the right foundation. So in this video, we're going to talk about our onboarding experience, recognition, leadership, our step selling system, the sales tools, supplies, scripting, video training, policy and procedures. There's a lot we're going to unpack in this video. We'll take it one piece at a time. But ultimately, my goal is simple. I want to create a foundation for my sales team that's so strong that they literally have to go out of their way and be creative to mess it up. They literally have to intentionally make mistakes or simply cut corners or be lazy to not succeed at their job. So me as a leader, I was obsessed with going out of my way to provide an abundance of tools and resources and training opportunities for my salespeople to absolutely master the craft and go into every house long-headed and eager to win that sale and have the confidence to convert on every precious opportunity, right? Now, of course, building any sales team starts with the initial interaction. I meet with a lot of companies where when they interview salespeople, they don't really take this step of the operation very seriously. And just like any sales encounter, when the salesperson comes into your organization to do that face-to-face interview, this is your masterful presentation. I felt responsible for reprogramming that salesperson's belief system in our company, in the products and services that we offer, in our reputation, our level of skill set and professionalism as an organization, our culture. So that first interaction you have with that salesperson is so important for them to get bought in and believing in the company that they're potentially going to be representing. So how are you dressed? Are you dressed like a professional? How clean and organized is your office? Are you bringing them into your office in a private area where everything's dress right? Or does it look like a bomb went off? Or maybe you're interviewing them in your gym clothes and you don't look like you're prepared for this. So I had a few things I wanted to make sure I was really, really organized for. So the first thing is I wanted to make sure I instilled that belief in that candidate. When they showed up, they're greeted by somebody at the front desk. A lot of times I would stack interviews close to one another. So they would see other salespeople leaving as they were coming in. So they saw that this job was in high demand and it was also a very competitive opportunity. Provide extreme clarity on the expectations and core values. So when a salesperson walked into my office for an interview, I had the training Bible, so our sales training book. I had our policy and procedures document that clearly outlined what's expected of them, roles and responsibilities, their compensation plan, lead handling etiquette, you name it. On my computer here, I had our entire online university being showcased so they can see they have an infinite amount of resources, whether it be through reading in the book or watching the training modules to master the craft and hone in their skills. So this is just some of the elements I had in place. And then of course, I also had my list of questions that I would ask every salesperson, and I would actually take notes during the interview. Now, in the beginning of any interaction with a salesperson, I think it's important that you're realistic as to what they're applying for. So for example, in my organization, we were strict that we ran a one-call close sales organization and that these outside salespeople were going to be driving in some cases 1 to 2 hours from home. And in some days, they're going to be working 10, 12-hour days. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I'd rather be realistic up front so they have the right expectations, they can get prepared, versus I sugarcoat it, I paint this job as all sunshine and rainbows, and then that salesperson gets blindsided with reality when they get out there. So one of the first questions I ask in the interview is, now let me ask you a question. Were you aware that this sales job that you're applying for is a one-call close sales job? I say, okay, I just want to be crystal clear. What that means for us is we're going to issue you a lead, and that's the beautiful part about this job, right? You don't have to go door knocking, you're not cold calling, you're not generating your own business. We will issue you a lead on a silver platter, and it's your mission, whether you choose to accept it, to go to that appointment, give it 100% effort to earn their business on that first visit. When you earn that prospect's business on that first visit, the great news is you're going to treat them like royalty, give them a 5-star white glove experience. That's going to be your customer for life. However, the caveat is if for any reason you can't convert on that lead on that first visit, that appointment will be issued to rehash and you will no longer be communicating with that prospect ever again. So let me ask you a question. Why is a one-call close sales opportunity like that the perfect fit for you? Now, of course, anytime I ask hard-hitting questions like that, I want to study their body language. I want to look at their face. I want to look at their shoulders. I want to look at their overall demeanor. Are they shifting a lot in their seat? Do they appear to be getting uncomfortable? Ultimately, I'm not going to waste my time or their time if this job is simply not a good fit. And there's no reason to go through this lengthy interview if right out of the gate they're like, one call close is really not my thing. I'm more of a relationship guy. I like to take my time and kind of slow roll the sales encounter. I'm a 3-visit type salesperson. So I already know that this person's probably not going to be compatible with what they're applying for. Now, another question I would like to ask is, just so we're crystal clear, this is an outside sales job. Now, have you done outside sales before? Okay, great. Now, what that means for us is occasionally you're going to be 1-2 hours from home, and we try to give you between 2 and 3 pre-scheduled meetings per day. which means you'll have a 10 o'clock appointment, 2 o'clock appointment, 6 o'clock appointment. Depending on what happens in that 6 p.m., I mean, you could be on the road from 8 a.m. and you could be coming home in some cases 10, 11 o'clock at night. So, 10, 12, 13-hour days are not uncommon here. So let me ask you a question. Why do you feel that a work schedule like that could be 10, 12 hours a day, is a schedule you're willing and able to take head on without complaint? So I want to be crystal clear, and this is my filtration system, right? Because once they enter my sales training, no one's going to work harder for them to make sure that they're properly prepared, educated, and equipped to be an outside sales warrior. But I just want to be real up front. Can they handle this or not? Then, of course, if they pass my initial screening questions, then I'm going to really brag up the opportunity. I'm going to show them our sales efficiency reports from our last year, our year to date, our last month, showing the types of money some of our reps are making, giving them a glimpse of the sales culture, talking about the company trips we've taken, talking about how we recognize employees, what the salesman of the year last year got received for their cash prize or their bonus or whatever recognition they received. So I want to give them a glimpse of our high performance open book sales culture of leaders that we have, so they can see the opportunity they're applying for is real. Because of course, if you throw in an ad that you can make anywhere from 150, 250,000, top performers making 300,000 or more, that's fine, but they're still a little skeptical if that's even real. So anytime you can bring the evidence to the table that we do have, in fact, a great majority of our team succeeding to that level, that's really exciting for a top performing salesperson to hear that type of stuff and to be able to see that. Now also in the interview, I would break down exactly what's expected of them. Of course, from a lead handling etiquette, communication requirements, all that stuff, so they know exactly what's necessary. Then of course, just like any interview, giving them an opportunity to tell you about them, their strengths, their weaknesses, their highlights. But I just wanted to be clear in the interview that this is something I took very seriously, is very organized, and make sure you can demonstrate to that salesperson that when they apply for your job, you're going to provide all the tools and resources and training and literature and videos, whatever they need to succeed. We're not a sink or swim organization. It's not like you come here and it's like, here's your sample, here's your kit, here's your contract, good luck. It's like, no, we take high-level professional training very seriously, and we only want the best of the best elite talent working on our high-performance team. So then moving on, assuming I've gotten this high-performance sales warrior to take the opportunity, I want to make sure that initial onboarding experience is seriously dialed in. Now, I meet a lot of companies where they do an onboarding and training, and they don't even have like a set agenda in terms of how their training's structured every day. So one thing that I made very clear for my sales team was a detailed day-by-day sales training agenda. And what this agenda would highlight is precisely what we're covering every single day, what their homework assignments are, and what's expected of them before they come back the next day. And this is an example of that. This is our Sales Academy Masterclass agenda we have at Grosso University. So if you ever attend our Sales Academy Masterclass, you're going to be provided a detailed agenda, and every single day is going to be highlighted on here. It's going to show you, okay, on day 6, I know I'm going to be covering the retail closing sequence. We're going to be going through these steps of the retail close. And then there's going to be homework assignments issued out to all the salespeople for day 7. And then of course on day 7, we're going to be covering the qualification sequence. So this is the perfect way to hold that salesperson accountable and to make sure they're actually keeping up with the training. Now, one thing I learned early in my career, that when I was training reps, if I just gave my reps an assignment and said, please learn this and come back tomorrow, be ready to role play it, I would get maybe like half the classroom that would actually learn it and half that wouldn't. But then I decided to try something a little different, because how do you motivate a salesperson? You motivate a salesperson through competition, recognition, and money. Money's a good one. So I started making this competitive. I started to make it every single day a little mini sales competition. So I basically said that whoever can come back and deliver this script the most confidently verbatim in front of their peers tomorrow, I'll throw a $100 gas card on the line, or I'll throw a new tool or widget for their inspection kit, or the shiny new, whatever it is, Roku for their TV. Some fun things I can throw on the line to really get them excited and motivated, because ultimately, if they're a high-performance salesperson, they want to win. They want to outperform their peers. And when I started turning every day in class into a daily competition, it never ceased to amaze me how much harder these reps are studying. And they're staying up to 1, 2, 3 in the morning trying to learn these scripts. And inevitably, they come back the next day and almost everybody had it mastered. So that was a big game-changing moment for me. But make your train fun, make your training competitive, make sure you're including ability for them to win and get recognized, and then make sure you have a day-by-day structured agenda to keep every single person on track, so then you can hold them accountable to keeping up with the training. Now, one thing I want to be clear about, when you train salespeople, you need to be testing them out. If there's no final exam at the end that they have to take and actually graduate from, there's no way to really hold them accountable for truly learning and remembering any of the material. So what I used to do day one of training, I used to hold up the Bible of in-home selling that I would train them on. I would tell them, this is your roadmap to the sale, this is your textbook for our class, and this is what you're going to be required to master over the next 2 weeks. And let me ask you all a question. Have you ever taken an important final exam in school, or you're taking an important test, whether it be in high school or college, and maybe you waited till the last minute to study for that test, so you stayed up all night crammed studying because it was really important, and you knew you really wanted to try to get a good grade, right? But it was one of the most important final exams of your college career, your high school career, maybe that class to get a good grade. Now, what if you're in high school or college and you had a professor or a teacher holding up a book like this, and I'm holding up the training manual, and they said that, I'm going to give you 2 weeks to master the contents in this book, and in 2 weeks from now, we're going to take a final exam. Anyone that can score an 85% or better on that final exam, I will personally pay you multiple six-figure income every year for the rest of your life. All you got to do is get an 85% or better on the exam. So my question is, how hard would you study for a final exam like that, knowing that you're going to be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars every year just for getting an 85% or better? Would there be any doubt you'd pass that test? Of course not. Is this any different? Because what's waiting for you on the other side of this training, if you can put forth the effort now to mastering this sales training and this material, you will be entitled to make multiple six-figure income every year for the rest of your life. But you got to put in the effort now. You have two choices. You can either be hard now or hard later, but it's going to be hard at some point. I'm sure we can all agree. We would rather put in the hard work now to make it easy for ourselves down the road. In the spirit of having a student workbook, so at Grosso University, as many of you already know, we have a 170-page workbook that basically educates a salesperson from the moment they wake up in the morning to the moment they close the sale, everywhere in between, exactly how to be a master agent of influence, do a masterful presentation and make the close the natural conclusion, also how to overcome any and all objections that are going to stand in their way. We like to think of this as a paint-by-numbers system. I don't want to necessarily be beholden to people that are like high D or high I personalities, or what we would describe as being more of a natural born salesperson. Ideally, if you have the right sales methodology, you can take people of all walks of life, different strengths and weaknesses, and plug them into your system and still build multi-million-dollar superstars. So if you look at this paint by numbers example here, so here's a Van Gogh for beginners, you can see this is 18 colors, so it's an 18-step process. Now we have an 11-step process at Grosso University, that's our sales system, but imagine this is an 11-step paint by numbers system. And if you get one of these, you get a canvas that has all the different numbers on it. As long as I can follow basic instructions, match up the right color with the right section on the canvas, I can create masterpieces, even if I'm not a natural born artist. I can create this Starlight by Van Gogh. It absolutely looks stunning, right? So with the right sales methodology, even if I'm not a natural born salesperson, I can create sales masterpieces, and this can be replicatable and duplicatable. My only prerequisite as a master agent of influence is if they have the right attitude and work ethic. That's it. And we like to call our sales process a velvet hammer because it is absolutely the opposite of high pressure sales. Of course, we want our salespeople to go into every home with the intention to close and earn their business, but they do it in such a high-level professional manner, the homeowner never feels that they were sold anything. All the homeowner feels and believes is that they made the decision on their own accord to buy your product, and they were able to give their informed consent on the matter. So that's a much better place to be. But again, a paint by numbers, and what this helps defy is the 80-20 rule. So you see in a lot of sales organizations where there's a lot of turnover, it's like 80% of the sales team is churning over and over again. It's a revolving door. And 20% of the sales team is successful. So we want to flip that and reverse it so where 80% of our team is highly successful and we can retain 80% of them, and only 20% of the sales team needs to be churned over periodically over time. And that's what the right sales methodology can do, because it eliminates excuses and shooting from the hip. If you want a way to hold your reps to a consistent level of performance, you got to have a sales process. So I actually read some interesting studies recently, and for home improvement companies that implement a sales system and a sales process, On average, they see an immediate 28% increase in annual revenue the first year. So if you're watching this training video and you don't have a sales training book, you don't have a sales training system that you're expertly trained on, it's like a sports team with no playbook. Imagine a football team where they just aimlessly run around the field throwing the ball around hoping they can score a touchdown. No, they need a set of plays. They need a playbook, and the coach needs to know it, all the players need to know it, and everyone needs to know their role and how they can execute the plays to achieve a common goal. So get yourself a playbook, reach out to Grosso University if you do not have one of those. Making your training experience a path of resistance. This is one thing I wanted to be clear on at the beginning of my sales training, that this will not be the path of least resistance. Our training is the path of resistance. So I want to make sure that you put in the hard work now so that when you go and issue leads independently, that part is easy for you. If I weak sauce the training, if I make my initial onboarding and training experience super easy for everyone, they're going to get blindsided with reality, and that's where you're going to have a lot of people burning out on you. I want them to almost quit during my training versus making my training too easy and they go out there and they get blindsided with reality. So I'd make my training intentionally difficult, and what I realized is a few things. When I make my training fun, challenging, and difficult, the path of the resistance, not only is that a fun way for them to challenge themselves in new and exciting ways, but when people put forth the effort and achieve things they've never achieved and push themselves beyond their perceived limitations, the belief in themselves that they have at the end of the day is absolutely off the charts. And what that translates to, because you made them believe in themselves in ways they haven't believed in a long time, the belief in the company they now represent, and the belief in the products and services they're out there selling, the belief in you as their leader is off the charts, right? They're ready to go chew through walls and dominate to perform for the betterment of themselves and the company. And that's what you want. You want that energy, you want that gratitude, you want that loyalty. One of the most common things I used to hear after my training is not only, Dominic, that was the best training I've ever had, but I just want to tell you personally, I'm not going to let you down. And when I had a salesperson tell me, I will not let you down, that tells me that they were grateful for the gift they just received, from the training system to the materials to the effort put forth in the training, and they feel like they achieved something that's greater than anything they've achieved in a long time, pushed themselves beyond their perceived limitations, and their love and belief for themselves at an all-time high, and they're just showing that gratitude to you for giving them that gift. But don't be afraid to make your training difficult. This is why doing a final exam, I want that final exam to be challenging. They're going to have to be able to know all the scripts of our system. They're going to have to know all the formulas and frameworks, the closing and objection handling. They're going to have to know our Masterful presentation. We're going to have to be able to role play this stuff out. So I want to make it challenging in the front loading phase so when they get out there and run the leads independently, they can hit the road running. And it wasn't uncommon for me to have a brand new sales rep come fresh out of training and be top of the leaderboard because they're sharp as an axe, they're fired with enthusiasm, they're so eager to perform on the betterment of the company. So that energy is absolutely incredible right out of the gate. They can slingshot themselves forward instantaneously. So, and again, mastering the content. So competition and money, give daily assignments, tie in cash grabs, competition with recognition. So the number one motivator of all salespeople is recognition, more so than money. So anytime they can get up front, perform or do something in a positive light and get recognized for it and get that pat on the back and get recognized in front of their peers, that means more to them than anything. So again, making sure that I'm making that training fun and competitive. So if you attend a closers camp, at closers camp, we give away cash prizes. We make it a competition. We give away trophies, because we want to make sure that salespeople have the opportunity to compete with their fellow peers, because competition is healthy, but then also they have a chance to get recognized. So imagine being recognized as Closers Camp champion, like Jeremy Atkinson here, look at that handsome devil, and be literally able to declare on a public stage, I am one of the top sales warriors in the country. So that feels amazing, right? But even within the confines of your organization, we want our sales reps to be absolutely proud of themselves and excited to get recognized in front of their peers, give them those opportunities to win. So Vince Lombardi, a lot of people quote Vince Lombardi, but he said, winning isn't everything, but the will to win is. That will to win is everything. So giving your sales warriors that opportunity to truly win, happiness is victory, that will to win, and you're going to see what reps on my team have that eye of the tiger, that will to win, and which reps do not. So make my training competitive and difficult. Of course, role playing goes without saying. We need to role play, drills for skills, repetition. That's how you learn any skill set. I don't care what it is. Repetition is the key to mastering anything. Now, what I see in a lot of trainings though, is they tend to only role play the red carpet scenarios, where it's like the sales rep shows up to a lead, there's literally the red carpet rolled out for them, and they're walking down the red carpet to the front door, and there's paparazzi there, and the sales rep's strutting their stuff, right? And then they get to the front door, knock on the door, the prospect opens the front door with a big smile on their face, and it's like that heavenly chime, and a light beaming down from the heavens above, some doves are flying out, and the homeowner greets them with a big smile and says, "We're so happy you're here. We actually have 3 hours set aside. We got the cookies and donuts prepared, and we got our checkbook in hand. We're ready to go. And as long as we can get this job done for under $50,000, we'll write you a big check. So once you come back in, or once you come into our house, so we can begin the purchasing process," right? So it's absolutely ridiculous. So no one's going to role play that, obviously, but that's the tendency for most sales trainings. They talk about the sunshine and rainbow situations. So how is a sales rep going to be prepared for reality, prepared for battle, if all I'm role playing is the stuff that almost never happens? So when you're drilling and rehearsing in the classroom, making sure you're working through the inevitable obstacles and challenges and objections and curveballs and the weird things that the salesperson will encounter through a typical day of lead running, so they are prepared for battle. They can develop that obstacle immunity. So when they get blindsided with an objection or blindsided with an obstacle, they can be creative, think on their feet, and have an intelligent framework or formula or script to overcome that more often than not. So when I used to drill and rehearse with my salespeople, it was like, okay, so when you knock on the door, the homeowner answers, and they try to cancel the appointment at the front door. Do you have a script you can deliver absolutely confidently verbatim without thinking? Or if a homeowner blindsides you with that right now, you're going to be stumbling over your words, fumbling, and look like an idiot. So that's the name of the game. You're going to get steamrolled by people and talk yourselves out of a lot of homes if you're not properly trained and conditioned to overcome these challenges. So I would literally role play that in the classroom. We would have a mock-up door. The salesperson would go on the other side. I would open the door. They would obviously start the introduction at the front door, and I would throw them an objection. And we'd role play through how to overcome all these little objections and stalls. Or when you walk into a house and a homeowner gives you some objection, we're like, just so you know, if your window's over $300, we can terminate this meeting. Or just so you know, if you're not able to remodel my full bathroom, we're not interested. So all those things, are you properly equipped to be able to overcome those obstacles and challenges? Or did you never practice that in the classroom? So the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So the way we sweat in peace is in the classroom. So make sure you're doing your sales team a service. Okay, we got the system, we got the scripting methodology, and included with that, we need to start practicing and training some of the inevitable challenges, obstacles, and objections that I need to be able to overcome to succeed in this job. So when I'm doing trainings with reps, I will often blindside them in the classroom with those things. Now, of course, as part of their onboarding and training, they need to have some ride-alongs. So I included the movie Ride Along with Kevin Hart, because they need some real-world exposure to what's going on and the reality of this job. Now, one thing I used to tell my salespeople is when you have a new rep riding along with you and you close the sale, the best way for them to learn things is by doing them. So the best thing for them to learn is not by watching somebody do it, but actively participating in the actual activity. So I wanted my new sales reps that were riding along with my veterans to get actively involved with filling out the paperwork. So whether it's processing the financing, filling out the agreement, whatever's involved with fully consummating a sale, make sure in that week of ride-alongs that new salesperson gets some repetition actually going through a full sales encounter from A to Z to fully consummate a sale. Because the last thing I want is to train my salesperson how to sell a job, and then they go start running leads independently. They close a sale, and they're like, what do I do next? They're completely lost in space, right? Make sure they have the initial guidance and training to be able to fully consummate a sale. Now, don't be afraid to have your salespeople ride with the best of the best and the worst of the worst. I know a lot of people are like, I only want my new reps riding with my top guys. Honestly, it's better for them to see both ends of the spectrum. So for me, when I would ride along with guys that weren't high performers, high achievers, it gave me a lot of confidence because I'm like, man, if this guy can sell anything, I'm going to be a killer. And then, of course, riding along with those talented salespeople is going to be a benefit. But it's important for them to see different strategies, different skill sets, different personalities, and the different ways people navigate the sales encounter. And of course, I used to let them know that you're going to see a lot of bad habits when you ride along with salespeople. Sometimes even the finest salesperson is going to skip over things, or they're not going to do things exactly textbook. And it's not your job to mirror, mimic, and emulate exactly what you see on those ride-alongs. But it's your job to see what a typical sales encounter looks like from start to finish, to take all the good things away that you can. So for example, maybe the salesperson does a good job telling stories in the home. Maybe they do a good job making the homeowner feel special, heard and understood, getting them talking. Maybe they have a creative way to overcome some challenging objection that you can notate for later. There's certainly going to be some great things that you're going to learn, but you want to be very careful mimicking and copying exactly what a salesperson does. The reason why I'm the one training you in the classroom the way I'm training you is because this is how you follow the sales process in the home. And then over time, what's going to happen is you're going to develop what we call your authentic swing, your true authentic way of delivering the message that works for you and for you alone. But that's not step one for you. It's like learn to play the music and then you can learn to play jazz later. Reps need to get actively involved. Ride-along should not be the last step of the training. I want to make sure that I have the last ability to influence their performance in sales. So what I realize is if I train a rep and then put them on ride-alongs and the last thing they see is the ride-alongs, before they go run leads independently, the last thing they remember is the ride-alongs, not what they learned in the classroom. So they tend to mimic and emulate some of those behaviors they took away from the ride-alongs and not so much the classroom. So make sure after that week of ride-alongs is completed that I still have some touch points in the classroom to make sure they're going in the right direction. I used to think of it as like the sport of curling, the Olympic sport, right? We just had the Winter Olympics recently. So you see they're throwing around that big concrete disc on the water or on the ice. So before they release it, they want to make sure it's going in the right direction. So I like to think of that's my salesperson. And again, before I release them to the wild, they're going the right direction. Then after they get released, I'm the guy with the broom too, steering it in the right direction, making sure that it's on track. So of course, after the in-class training and onboarding, after the ride-alongs, making sure that I do have a final exam. So it includes verbatim scripts along with role-playing, product knowledge, multiple choice, true, false, whatever it is. If you need help building and creating a final exam, we got templates for you. But it should include your sales methodology and also some stuff to your product knowledge too, to make sure that you can truly certify these people as sales warriors. That's the crazy thing about this industry. You think about it. Do you need any formal education to be a salesperson in this industry? Do you need any formal license or college degree or diploma? So a lot of times people get some weak sauce training, they don't get any certification, they just go thrown out there into the wild, right? That's why this industry as it stands is like wild, wild west. So we want to make sure when they come into our organization that it feels very polished, very professional, very intentional. And when they leave, they feel like a certified sales warrior, certified professional, licensed to sell. So that's the vibe I want to feel like. They got their degree from Grosso University or from your company's sales academy. So make sure you do have some means to test them out. It is absolutely crucial. So this footage here is a group of hundreds of sales warriors at a closers camp taking a final exam. So literally in 3 days, we test and certify these reps. But of course, most companies are not going to have an onboarding and training like that. You know, you can give the best training in the history of humanity, but if you're lucky, your salespeople will retain maybe 10% of it. So how do we make sure that when they go out to the wild and start running leads independently, that we have additional ongoing training and support? So like at Grosso University, we have an entire online sales training platform with hundreds of hours of sales training content. And this is something people can access 24/7, 365. And I like to think of this as another element of lane assist, keeping the salesperson on track. Because we have to understand that the brain is a bucket with a hole in the bottom. So throughout the training, I'm filling up that bucket, but then as soon as they go run leads independently, what happens? It leaks out. They forget half the stuff that they learn in the training, or more than half, right? 90% of it. So we need to make sure for accountability and just to make sure they have the opportunity to get the repetition they need to master this, that we have an online training platform or university they can access 24/7, 365. Also for me as a leader, when I have video modules that they can watch and tune into, I can use this to set assignments. If they're basically needing to improve on a certain skill set or a certain part of the sales process, I can assign those training videos to them. So it's the ultimate way to hold my team accountable too. The right salesperson is really going to latch onto this because now when they're driving in their car, they're turning their automobile into Drive Time University, into their mobile library. They're able to constantly get that repetition, that education, so they can truly internalize exactly what it is that they're learning. When I was at Mad City, I built an online university that had all the training modules of our whole sales training process. It also had videos of me doing full product demos for all of our product lines, whether it be for windows or baths or kitchens or roofing, you name it. And my salespeople could tune into that stuff 24/7. And the year that I introduced an online training platform, and I just want to be clear, there's a lot of things that go into this, but the year I introduced an online university, our sales team actually grew in revenue by $20 million in 1 year. That was our growth that year. So we went from 30 million to 50 million that year. And then the following year, we went from 50 million to 30 million, right? But all these tools and resources foundationally is what makes a sales team unstoppable. Make sure they have access to this. Without accountability, it's like herding a bunch of cats. I need some sort of accountability. And my number one word in leadership is clarity. So if you're trying to build a high-performance sales team, you need to be crystal clear on what's expected of them, from ride-along etiquette, lead handling etiquette, communication requirements, benchmarks, performance, how they make money, how they get paid, their commission structure, all this stuff. So sales meeting etiquette, all this stuff, dress code, the travel requirements. In our policy and procedures document, which is what this is, think of this as like the governing document to build a sales powerhouse. We had line by line everything that was clearly laid out and listed, what's expected of that salesperson. And I would cover this absolutely in detail with every salesperson during the initial training and after the training was over. So there was no gray area on what was expected of them. This is literally the holy grail for sales leaders to build a culture of accountability. So all the things that you have in terms of their NSLI or closing requirements, or maybe use sales performance score. I know there's a lot of companies implementing that. Or anything from the calls they have to make, how they report and dispo leads. All that stuff is absolutely mandatory. It's really, really special. We have templates for this at Grosso University, but that was one thing I was really hell-bent on, is making a very robust policy and procedure. And it's almost like their contract for their position. And the salespeople sign off on that with the understanding that this is what they're responsible for in their day-to-day. We required our sales team to make a call from inside every house and every lead without exception. And I can do an entire educational workshop just on that. As a matter of fact, I have done it many times. There's no situation where a salesperson is leaving a home without calling somebody. So just to summarize these 3 calls, they're going to make a call anytime there's a situation in which they're not demoing. So it could be one leg, it could be a no-show, it could be a time constraint issue. If there's any reason they're not able to go through a full sales encounter and demo it and deliver a price, they need to call somebody to reschedule that appointment from the home. Now, another call that's made is when they sell the job, we want to make sure they're calling from the home to report the sale. We'll dispo the lead, we'll enter everything into the CRM. If it's relevant to you, we'll set up the final measure and site inspection. We'll get them on the calendar, and the project's in motion. So it's a very important element of holding that salesperson accountable, but also buttoning up that sale, because in the prospect's mind, the project's already in motion, things are moving forward. So make sure they do that. And then, of course, if there's any reason they cannot close the sale on their own accord. So let's say they followed the whole sales process from A to Z, they're deep into closing, and they can't close it on their own. The last call we required is what we described as a higher authority call, a higher authority close, or a phone drop. That's where they would have to call a manager or someone from our office to actually tee up another close to attempt to earn that prospect's business before leaving. And we got all kinds of training on why this is important, but this is a big element of our policy and procedure, just an example of the communication requirements that we have clearly laid out that the salesperson agrees on. I just wanted to say, in conjunction with this policy right here, I had a company that just introduced this policy into their sales team, that a phone call must be placed from inside every home on every lead, and their closing rate jumped by 10% instantly overnight. Company-wide, 10% increase across the board in closing. So this stuff really matters and makes a difference. If you want to print your own money and generate consistent revenue, these are the things that can take you a long way. Now, your sales team deserves a masterful presentation. I can't tell you how many times I'm working with sales teams and the training is okay, they have a decent sales process, but their in-home presentation is god-awful. It is absolutely horrendous, and it doesn't inspire much confidence in your salespeople. So we want to make sure that whatever we're carrying into that home, I mean, that's a major element of your brand image in the public. So we're so concerned about how our website looks and how all of our brochures and our flyers, all of our marketing looks, and then we carry this presentation in the home that looks like it was built in the 1970s. You know, it's like, what is going on here? It's outdated, it's got distorted images, it's got outdated colors. The visuals are horrendous. There's no videos, it's not interactive. So we want to make sure we're building a masterful presentation for our salespeople, because the more masterful this is, the easier it'll be to inspire confidence in my sales team to follow the system and to deliver that masterful presentation the same way every time. We have a good partnership with companies like Engage, and I always say the best close in the world is a masterful presentation. The best platform to deliver that masterful presentation is Engage. But again, you can use PowerPoint, you can use Canva. There's a lot of different products available. I know Engage is an industry leader, and we absolutely love those guys. I'm actually doing this whole presentation on Engage right now. This is a part that needs a lot of attention for a lot of companies, and all their presentation is designed for is to provide visual reinforcement to what the salesperson is talking about. Now, why does this matter? So when you're in a home and you're talking to a prospect, they'll retain 5 to 10% of what you talk about. However, they'll retain 50 to 60% of what they see and experience. So we want to make sure that we're reinforcing everything we're talking about with videos and imagery, because people think in pictures, not words. So this is something every company needs to take seriously. If your presentation that they're carrying into the home is not absolutely masterful, you can reach out to Grosso University. We have an entire program where we can build this for you, or at the very least, seek out opportunities to get a new presentation built ASAP. You will see your closing rate skyrocket the second your sales team could go armed for battle with this masterful presentation. This is something I was absolutely obsessed about, and a presentation's never done. So you're gonna build a presentation, then you're gonna constantly be updating it, but the whole point is make sure at least foundationally this sales presentation is masterful. Of course, sales meetings. I can't believe that there's companies going out there still not doing sales meetings. My belief on this subject is sales meetings need to be weekly. Sales meetings should be every single week. And in a perfect world, I know this sounds crazy nowadays, but sales meetings should be weekly in person every day. Now, some of you have different markets and territories that you're in. So at the pinnacle of my career at Mad City, we were in 6 different markets and territories. And what I did is in every single office, we had 85-inch TVs, we had beautiful sound bars and microphones installed in the ceilings. And what that allowed us to do is, even though we were doing these meetings remote, it was like we were all together every single week in the respective markets. So if they were in the La Crosse market or Milwaukee market or Green Bay market, those people all met at that location, and then in that location, they were all role-playing and drilling, rehearsing together. Because it's that exchange of energy, it's that exchange of ideas, it's that human connection that these salespeople need each week to re-energize, to get re-inspired, to get motivated, to go out there and kick butt again. Even if you said nothing in a sales meeting and everyone could just get together and share ideas, if you said nothing and they just talked, it's going to be extremely valuable. But of course, for sales meetings, just like I showed you before with the sales training, make sure I have detailed and structured agendas. Make sure that I have a specific topic that I want to cover. Because again, they're going to go out there and bad habits are going to form. Your salespeople are going to go into a house and they're going to deliver a certain slide or a certain element of the sales process, and it's not going to work. Or they're going to get a negative reaction from the homeowner. So in the next lead, they're going to skip over that. Or they're going to deliver a certain close in the home and it's not going to work. They're going to deliver a certain script in the house and it's going to backfire. They're going to have all these things happen, and weeks and months of that happening, bad habits form, things change, and before you know it, they're so far off course, they don't even know where they started. That's why the sales meetings are so important, because it's that one opportunity I can just wrangle my arms around my whole sales team, bring them all together, and we can focus on getting back on track and getting back to mastery on a certain subject matter. Now, what I used to preach to my salespeople, more impressive than knowing every close in the world, and like if you read the Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar, there's like over 200 closes in there. So more important than memorizing all those closes, how about you get brilliant at the basics? So when you look at any athletes, the types of stuff that they're drilling over and over, they're trying to stay and maintain their level of brilliance at the basic fundamentals of the game. So don't take that for granted. And this is what sales meetings are great for. It gives us the opportunity to revisit all these different sections of the sales process where we need to kind of get re-energized and get back to the playbook here and making sure we can get back to brilliance at the basics. That's going to take you a long way. So we need a set agenda, cover the numbers and KPIs, of course, opportunity to recognize people for performance. We want to do some brief housekeeping. I don't want to do a lot of housekeeping in a sales meeting because, again, I don't want this to be a situation where I'm just barking at them. It's a bunch of negative pressures to perform, and they leave feeling demoralized and debilitated. I want them to leave this sales meeting feeling re-energized and re-inspired. So most times when I'm dealing with housekeeping stuff, I do that one-on-one individually. Of course, there are cases where I do have to broadcast something to the whole team, but I want to make that brief, and I do not want that to be the headline in the sales meeting. Role play mastermind group. So the best thing you can do is turn your sales team into an open book culture of sales leaders. So the thing I used to share with my salespeople is, I know some things you don't know, you know some things I don't know, together we can do great things. So more important than me just talking all the time, it's important that we cultivate our own mastermind group here, because I promise you there's nothing we cannot achieve together. One thing I commonly say when I'm doing trainings is I've learned more from my salespeople than I've learned from any book I've ever read or any seminar I've ever attended. They have taught me more because we turn this into a mastermind group where everyone is exchanging and sharing best practices, and we're getting those creative juices flowing. And before you know it, these brilliant ideas are just coming to the surface. It's absolutely magnificent. I want to end every single sales meeting with goal setting and then also a motivational segment, because we want to leave on a positive note. I want them just ready to go back to the appointment and give it their all once again, instead of going to their next appointment being like, oh man, I just want to go to bed and take a nap, right? So bring some energy, bring some passion, but make sure you have a method to the madness. Most sales meetings I've seen from companies, there's no agenda, there's no flow, there's no format. I mean, this is like a step-selling sales process in itself. But take sales meetings very seriously. It's your one chance to have a massive influence on your entire team. Of course, in sales meetings, we can talk about company competitions. At our company, we often did annual vacations and stuff people could qualify for. We would often break the sales team up into two teams, kind of like people picking their dodgeball teams. And those two teams would go head-to-head to win, and whoever won, we would do golf outings and company cookouts, sporting events, you name it. One thing I want to say in terms of recognition, that's the best thing you can do. Recognizing your sales team in front of their spouses and their family. So if I can do like a company cookout, let's say midpoint to the year, bring everybody together, we got our midpoint recognition, the wife, the kids, the spouses are there, whoever it is, or the husband's there, and we're recognizing our team in front of their family, in front of their spouses and significant others. It's absolutely insane how powerful that is. But make sure you include the spouse or the significant others in as many things as you can, because it's no secret that sales is a tough racket. They're away from home a lot. If they're going to be successful in sales, they need the support system at home. And if you're not including their spouse or their girlfriend or significant other in company events, they're going to feel completely isolated from the business, and they're not going to care, and they're probably going to be talking in that rep's ear about why they should leave the job. So make sure you include them so they can celebrate the wins together. It's absolutely important. Then field coaching. So when your reps are through training and they're out there kicking butt and taking names, I want to make sure that I, as a sales leader or field sales manager, I'm providing that post-training lane assist that they need. So there's so many companies I talk to where they don't do ride-alongs. To me, it's like being the best sharpshooter in the world, but you're blindfolded shooting in the dark. Because if all I'm doing is listening to what the salespeople are telling me is happening on the lead, I'm not going to accomplish very much. I need to see it for myself. Now, of course, we have partnerships with amazing companies like Xero and Rilla. As a matter of fact, Xero is one of our diamond sponsors at Grosso University. And Xero is an AI speech analytics technology that allows you to do virtual ride-alongs. You can actually record a salesperson in the house, and you can get priceless visibility as to how they're performing without actually seeing them. As valuable as that is, and that's priceless to be able to have, because now I have x-ray vision on my whole team at a snapshot, that still does not replace the need for me to get in the car every now and then and ride with my reps. Because, for example, when I'm riding with my sales rep on the way to the appointment, I might have a strong briefing session. We're going to get them in the right mindset, because a lot of this is just a therapy session. And also, I come into the ride-along with data and information as to what I want to improve upon, so we can have an intelligent briefing conversation. Of course, when I'm riding along with the salesperson in person, the advantage of that versus just relying on an audio recording is like I get to key into their body language, their voice inflection, their facial expressions, all the things that make for a majority of communication. So for example, 55% of all communication is body language, 38% is tonality, only 7% is the words. So that's where I can fill in the 93% of communication and give them coaching on. And then also after the debrief is over, after the ride-along is over, I'm going to cover a detailed ride-along evaluation form. So when I'm observing a rep in the house, I'm not just sitting there watching, I'm taking notes. So I'm actively participating. The dullest pencil's been the sharpest memory. And every step of the sales encounter is being graded and scored. And as much as possible, I'm going to talk about the positive things I'm seeing because I want to boost their confidence, and then a few areas of improvement. Because I want to make sure the sales rep is getting the most they can as an outside perspective on this ride along so they can work on those skills and habits and course correct along the way. After the ride along is over, I'm going to go through that evaluation form line by line. I want to make sure they have a copy of it and I have a copy of it. So it's really, really important because now we have a documented paper trail of basically how we've been supporting our salesperson and holding them accountable and the different things that I've assigned to them to improve upon. But that sales rep also has a physical document that shows exactly what they need to work on. So it's absolutely priceless in my opinion. Now what sales leaders must be prepared for is the ability to do observational and demonstrational ride-alongs. So observational is when I as a sales leader am watching my salesperson from start to finish. Demonstrational is when that salesperson is watching me as their leader. Because sometimes to get a salesperson back on track, they just need to see it being done by somebody else's textbook and have that lead to a successful outcome. And now they're bought back in, now it makes sense to them. I promise you that I personally was able to turn so many salespeople around by having them observe me and then having them replicate the correct way, because over time they start to believe and feel that they have a better way of doing things. And their shortcutting and cutting of corners is a better way. But when they see that if I get back to the system, get brilliant at the basics once again, the close can be the natural conclusion and it can help boost my performance. It's as simple as this. If you're a sales leader or an owner overseeing that sales team, you're the coach. If you're the coach of any team, how effective are you going to be if you don't know the playbook? So you must know the playbook better than anybody. So I should be able to regurgitate the scripts and the methodology and every play in that book better than anyone on my team. Now, it does not mean I have to be the best player on the team. So I've trained a lot of salespeople that are far better salespeople than I am. They actually could sell circles around me. I know the playbook better than they do, though. And I'm a better coach than they are. They're two completely different jobs. But you must be able to systematically demonstrate exactly how to go through a full sales encounter from start to finish and have that lead to a successful outcome so I can turn those reps back on track. It's absolutely essential. Very, very important. So I just want to recap because this has been a very lengthy video and I appreciate everyone's endurance here, but I just want to lay down some absolute golden nuggets for all of you watching. How do you build a high-performance sales team that generates results over and over so you feel like you can print your own money? First of all, make sure I have a robust recruiting and hiring process. So one thing you hear us say at Grosso University, you need to always be recruiting. Make sure you're always visible to top performers. You never know when your next superstar is waiting for their next opportunity. And there's always salespeople shifting around this industry all the time. So make sure I always have recruiting ads out. I'm always visible so I can capture those top performers. When I do capture them, make sure I have a dialed-in interviewing process. That's where I start getting them bought into my company and myself as a leader, getting to believe in the job that they're applying for. Again, if I'm dressed like a bum, it's very unorganized, there's no structure to it, they're not going to be impressed. So make sure when they come in, they're already like, wow, this company is serious about what they do. Provide a step-selling sales process. Again, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, and it's often the road that leads to nowhere. Make sure I have a step-by-step paint-by-number system to hold that sales team accountable, but also something to boost performance and make success replicatable, duplicatable, predictable. Make sure I have an online training platform or some sort of way for the salespeople to access the sales training videos and modules after the training's over. That way, 24/7, 365, they can constantly educate themselves, whether it's at the gym, they can listen to the training content, whether it's in their car, all the hours they're spending driving. It's Drive Time University. Policy and procedures. Make sure I have a governing document that clearly outlines how a sales rep's graded on their performance. What's the benchmarks that they must meet and exceed to maintain employment? It's important that you're clear. Here's how you're hired, here's how you're fired. Here's exactly how you'll be let go here. Here's what's tolerated and here's what's not. So you've heard this quote before, but it's worth sharing. So your tolerance of poor performance sets the standard in your organization. So in this policy and procedures, we're just going to outline what's not tolerated. What's not tolerated from a sales efficiency, what's not tolerated from communication and lead handling etiquette. So make sure that's clearly outlined, the sales reps sign off on that. A masterful sales training and onboarding experience. Make it the path of resistance. Make it fun. Make it competitive, but make it challenging. And please test and certify your reps. Make sure there's some way to hold them accountable for retention of the information. So make sure that there's some grade they have to achieve, whether it's 80% or 85%. So what I usually mandate is they have to score an 85% or better to pass the final exam and be issued leads independently. And it's amazing. Almost nobody failed it, because when you have a goal and a deadline, it's amazing what you can achieve. And that's why that's important. Make sure your sales team has a masterful presentation, something that you're proud of, something that truly represents your brand. It's got beautiful images, it's got beautiful graphics, beautiful videos. It's absolutely stunning. It's got to be the most beautiful thing that's projected to the public. So if I were to look at your marketing materials and I see that some of your product brochures and your TV commercials are way more polished than your in-home presentation, there's a problem here. This is a vital foundational part of your brand image in the marketplace, right? So make sure that presentation's masterful and inspires confidence in your sales team, and also it helps navigate them through the selling process. Product samples and supplies, along with a masterful presentation. Make sure my sales team is armed for battle, that they have the actual kits, tools, samples, and supplies to do their job. And the simple goal is, instead of just talking about things, I want to figure out a way I can get the homeowners physically and mentally involved into the process, engage their senses, getting them touching, feeling, and experiencing what it is that I'm selling. So strong financing partner, we didn't talk about that, but being able to leverage financing as a boomerang to the sales is an important skill set, so make sure you do offer financing. You want to talk about being able to generate revenue as a home improvement business and the sales team, you got to have a strong financing partner. Weekly sales meetings, that's not optional for me, because again, in 2 weeks is amazing how many bad habits can form. So that's my weekly checkpoint where we can drill, we can rehearse, we can remotivate, re-inspire, re-energize our sales team, and get them fired up to go back out there for the coming week. Field management coaching, make sure I have some visibility on what's going on in the field. I'll literally coach some home improvement companies and they're talking about their underperforming salesperson. And my question always is, when you rode along with that salesperson, what did you see? And they're like, well, Dominic, we didn't ride along with them. You didn't ride along with them, so how are you supposed to know what they're doing? They're like, we don't. I'm like, okay. So if we don't want to shoot blindfold in the dark, let's make sure we're getting out there, getting in the trenches with our reps, whether it's you or some sort of field manager, doing evaluations and actually pinpointing what's happening. So the old quote is, diagnosis without prognosis is malpractice. So I want to make sure I'm truly diagnosing exactly what's going on with that salesperson so I can prescribe a solution, a prescription to turn that salesperson around. And master the game forwards and backwards as a sales coach, as a sales leader, because nobody's going to take a sales system seriously if the leader of that team or the coach does not know it. So a lot of information. If you like this content, make sure you give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, share with your friends. Again, we laid a lot of information out for you on this YouTube video. And make sure you stay tuned on the Grosso YouTube channel. We're going to have loads of free educational content that's going to show you how to build an apex level home improvement company, whether you're trying to close more sales, whether you're trying to generate more leads, or you're trying to build a powerhouse team, you name it, it's all going to be here. So I appreciate your time, and on behalf of the entire Grosso University team, yes, you are a closer.